Transformers, Chapter 6, Death from Above. We're playing as Vortex. Don't shoot me, guys, if that's wrong. Shoot the wiki. But this is a really interesting level, this one. Really interesting. And it has some really, really nice features that I wasn't expecting to enjoy. Usually when I get to a flying level in a game, it makes me think of flying around in the Banshee in like Halo 1 and having a horrible time because it controls like total dog shit. And I know that's a controversial opinion because people like how those vehicles felt, but I never did. Dude, I'm the guy that thinks the Warthog always controlled like dog shit and never wanted to drive it. And you know the thing with that? It's an interesting opinion, isn't it? And it is quite acerbic, but it's true for me. However, I do believe it's like anything else, isn't it? If you take the time to learn the Warthog, you can be really good in that vehicle, and it's a skill because it's not the easiest thing to drive. So as much as I don't like it, I'm glad it's the way it is for the people that do, you know? But in this game, usually a sequence such as this would really irritate me, because I'm not one for like shooting in space like this. I used to be a massive fan. Back on the N64, the Rogue Squadron games, I played those games into oblivion, getting gold medals and everything, and they were really hard, and I was too stupid to understand what I was doing, so I failed all the time. But I played the living shit out of those two games. And then there was one release on the GameCube, and I played the hell out of that one as well. And like, I really liked Lilac Wars and, you know, games such as that. Or Star Fox, as you guys know it as. But it went away, and I don't know why it went away. And then when it came to Star Wars Battlefront 2, where you could get in the Starfighters and do this, and they even had it in that weird campaign they released that I'm totally going to cover for YouTube, even though it's terrible. I say terrible. It's not terrible. When you're shooting in third person, it's fun. When you're doing anything else, it's kind of arse cheeks. But in that game, it just felt like you were constantly chasing your tail. The whole time, chasing your tail, chasing your tail, chasing your tail, and I didn't much enjoy it. But in this game, all the flying moments are pretty solid because they don't overstay their welcome. So I'm going to have to apologise there, guys, because I've just stopped the recording and gone back over this a few times, and there's like a random black screen there with audio, and I don't know why. I had absolutely no problems capturing this game. It worked with OBS like a dream. But just then, I can't answer that. It must have been me like alt-tabbing and turning my cheats on or something, because that's bizarre. I don't know what's going on. I hope it doesn't happen again. That's scaring me now. Fingers crossed you won't hear me mention this anymore and it didn't happen again. But yeah, that was a black screen of randomness on the old Vortex level. But this is one of my favourite levels in the game because of how dynamic it is. At any moment, you can turn into a plane, essentially, into this helicopter and fly away. And it adds a dimension that I think once you get used to in this game, it's hard to go back to. Like right now, I make my own path. I go where I want, I do what I want, and I can assail these people from any angle. This kind of flexibility, verticality, and player choice is exactly what I'm looking for. This is what gets me excited in games. And it's crazy that I'm playing a Transformers game from a decade ago that lets me do this, and now video games are boring. All you do is walk around and let people talk to you and stick pins in photographs in a fucking imaginary land. Like, imagine all the places to choose for an imagination. You choose the most mundane fucking place you can. Wonderful. Anyhow, this level is really, really tricky. But you've just got to be patient and not overextend. Keep getting that shield back, see what you can do. And I really like this system of a regenerating shield and a HP below that has to be replenished by other means. I think it's a good way of making difficulty without it feeling too bullshit. Because you can die really quick, and you can deserve it, and at other times you can take an absolute pounding if you play smart. And I think that combination is real nice. That was weird, wasn't it? He took 2 hits and the second hit didn't knock him down. But anyhow, moving on. And this is probably the most powerful craft for anti-shotgun men. Because the moment the shotgun men turn up, you can fly off. And it's the funniest thing in the world. So I absolutely recommend experimenting with your abilities if you can. And I wonder if this character is in the War for Cybertron. Can you play as Vortex in that game, guys? Because if you can, he might be spot on. But it does seem on some of this footage as well that I'm not even turning the hood off anymore. I'm kind of just keeping it on. Which I hope you don't mind. It was my intention to turn it off, but it kept turning itself back on, and I get really annoyed when games do that. A lot of my projects, guys, when I'm trying to map them out for what I want to cover, I look on Nexus mods to see if I can turn HUD off. I look on PC Gaming Wiki, and I see if I can find a way to make the game look a bit more beautiful. And if they have one, it goes into the backlog of things when I'm hungry to do it and when I'm going to go over there and check it out, like what I did for Arkham Asylum. And as a little teaser, because right now I can't stream, so instead I'm doing this. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an insight into something coming up, because there's quite a lot of projects that are hitting the channel right now. And I've had these projects made for a while, I've been working on them all year. So people think that I've just been like busting my ass right now, but I've been busting my ass all year. It's just there's times to upload and there's times not to upload on my channel, because my channel's dead as fuck. It's in a really terrible place. I can barely get 1,000 views. It's tragic, really. I should quit, but I'm stubborn and I like doing it. Oh, here's the shotgunners, by the way, so run away and shoot those guys. But I'm going to be covering Miles Morales, because I didn't do it when it came out because I was really disappointed in the game. But I'm going to go back in there and make a project for it. And I'm going to do like a superhero like juxtaposition as well. So you'll get at some point, I can't tell you when, it might be next year. It might be next December, who knows. But you're going to get a Miles Morales project, which will be similar to the one I did for the previous Spider-Man. It'll be no upgrades, no damage, something like that maybe. On the hardest difficulty. And I'm also going to do an Arkham game. I don't know if it'll be Arkham Knight, I don't know if it'll be Arkham City, but it'll be no damage, potentially no upgrades, like I did for Asylum. And I'm going to have those two videos air quite close, so you can watch one and then you can watch the other and you can kind of make your own contrast. Because right now there's this think tank that's happening on the internet that the Spider-Man games have replaced Arkham in this pantheon of the best like superhero game. And I know people like to shit on Arkham Knight because of the Batmobile and things that they didn't agree with, but I think Spider-Man 2 will have to do a lot more than Spider-Man 1 did to take over Arkham in my heart. Because I feel like Spider-Man's combat is really fun, but it's nothing compared to that game at all. It's not even close. And I play those games for combat. I don't do it for the fantasy, I don't do it for the flying, I don't do it for the cutscenes. I do it for the beating the shit out of people with the timed combat and all the gadgets. And Spider-Man's gadgets are amazing, don't get me wrong, but when we talk about just the combat as a whole, I prefer Arkham, I think I always will. But my mod asked me if I'd struggled with this level, because he was having trouble with it. And I could see why he's having trouble with it, because you do die really quick on this one. But I didn't have trouble with it, that's the thing. Not to say like I'm like the best gamer in the world, take that, Khan. Like I just played, you know, I was just into it. I was just playing the game, I was listening to some TV shows and stuff, and listening to some music or whatever, and just getting on with it and having a great time. But I can definitely see why you would struggle here, because this is super dangerous. But that's the cool thing, isn't it, about video games? Everybody has those moments where they have a tough time, and then you don't, and then vice versa. Like, I'll never forget Gears of War 2, me, dude. There's a sequence in Gears of War 2 at the end of the game where you're going into the Hive, where you go on a monorail, like a sky rail thing, to cross over to where the elites are, the Royal Guards or whatever they're called. And that monorail, I died so many times on it. It was the hardest part of Gears of War 2 on Insane. I didn't think that campaign was hard at all. And that was back when I was like fucking super deep in Gears. Like I bled Gears in those days. All I used to do is play Insane. And I thought Gears 2's campaign was like completely free until that one sequence, and then it bummed me into oblivion. And I talked to a bunch of people afterwards, and no one had problems there. I want to know what happened, dude. If I could get a time machine, I'm not going back to meet Jesus. Fuck that guy. I'm going back to see what happened on that sequence. Was I doing something wrong? Was I playing like a scrub? Like, I just don't get it. I feel like I was the best I'd ever been. But maybe it's our brain protecting ourselves, because I don't think anybody thinks they're trash, do they? That's the problem with the brain. It's too busy fucking Dunning-Krugering everybody to make you realise that you need to improve. But I always feel like I'm the best I've ever been in gaming at that moment, like right now. Like I feel sharper, I feel more honed, I feel more practiced. And of course, don't get me wrong, like right now, Dark Souls 1, am I the best I've ever been at that game? No, because I've not played it for months. Like I'm rusty and sloppy as fuck. That's just how it works, but give me enough time and I can get back to where I was. And I feel like once you get to a certain level with video games, you can retain that really quickly. You can just kind of get back to where you are, chip the rust off, and within an hour, sometimes it's like 3 hours and you're back to where you are. Sometimes it takes a day or two, depending on how long it's been. Like, I played Metal Gear Solid 2 recently, a game from my childhood that I absolutely adore. And the last time I touched that game is when I covered it on YouTube, like 10 years ago. So it's been a decade. And I know so much about that game because I spent 6 months playing a demo for it and then just absolutely devouring it when it came out. But that 10 years was long enough for me to embarrass myself. I looked horrible. I didn't even know how to pick bodies up. I didn't know how to do anything. It was really awkward. But it's all still there, you know. I knew you could pick the bodies up. I knew you could, like, stand on your tiptoes while aiming and stuff. I knew you could move and aim at the same time, but I couldn't tell you what to press to do it. So if you go onto my stream when it comes back up and you check those videos of that sponsored stream, you'll see me, like, a guy who has a lot of time in Metal Gear Solid 2 trying to figure out how to, like, do basic functions. And I couldn't even remember how to knock on walls. I'm like, how do you knock? Like, this is so weird. But I got there in the end, and it all kind of comes back because it's just dormant, isn't it? It's dormant and it's sleeping. And then the cool thing about looking back on yourself is sometimes you think you're at a really good peak of something and you're not. And it's only through contrast and separation that you come to understand that you're not where you thought you were. And I get that for a lot of games too, because you get super passionate, you get super deep, you get super involved, and you think that you're doing something, you know, you think you're really hitting it, and then after a while you look back and you're like, damn, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I wasn't where I thought I was. And sometimes you go back and you're like, dude, I was on fire here, I was killing it. But sometimes, no, it's just not that at all. And I do see that a lot. I see it with PvP mostly. Like, when I thought I was the best at Call of Duty, I look back at it now. Obviously, my frame of reference is so different. Like, I look back when I was really, really on it. And I don't really have the footage on the channel, sadly, of when I was really on it. Because when COD 4 first came out and we were playing it like 8 hours a day, like, that was about the sharpest I've probably ever been in a Call of Duty. Just absolutely loving it and just living it and having a great time. But I reckon if I were to watch that footage back now, I'd think I was a jobber and I'd think I was trash. Because it just seems to be the truth, doesn't it? And that's what's funny about progression and development and maturity. Like, I might look back at this run right now and think I was trash, you know? I might look back at this commentary and think it's trash. Because that's just how things change and how things are never the same. They're always continually evolving. And that's why you've got to try and move with them. And you don't have to change exactly who you are and everything that you like, but you do have to keep pushing and striving and finding new angles, because if you don't, there's just nowhere for you to go. The ceiling is there. And I see it a lot in, like, Dark Souls 1. In Dark Souls 1, there was a point where I thought I was pretty damn good at PvP. I knew I wasn't the best, but I thought I was good. And I don't know if it's because I won a lot, because I got, like, easy fights quite a lot or something, or if I just ran into the right people. But I definitely fluffed my ass a little bit with my ability. And I thought, like, I'm solid. I can probably fight anybody and give them a good fight. And maybe I could have. And I did, because I fought some great players. But watching it now, having gone in and, you know, tried to learn fighting games, and from that road to, you know, fighting game mastery or understanding, where I played on Injustice and then Street Fighter 4, and then from there I've played, like, a bunch of other fighting games, all the way up to now trying to learn Street Fighter 6. Like, when I go back and I look at my Dark Souls PvP, I see a player who's reckless and having a good time and doing all the high-flying shenanigans that you expect, but I also see a person that just doesn't quite get it. And I mean the spacing, and I mean the strategy, you know, like, I see a player, and I feel this to this day, because I still have it in my brain. I think it might be something like ADHD, but whenever somebody was defensive, I was even more aggressive. It's just something inside me. And it makes me feel like... Do you remember the Sanctus fight in Devil May Cry 4? Where you always feel like you're chasing him and you're kind of holding your breath because you don't want him to get away. And you're really nervous he's going to get away and get his shield back, so you kind of play sloppy and play overly aggressive and make mistakes because you overextend. That is essentially how I played PvP in Souls, and it's how I play fighting games sometimes, and I really need to stamp down on it in the moment, or I get really carried away. And it's just because I've always been really aggressive. Always. Like, I'm always moving, I'm always pushing, I'm always striving. So for me, rush down is what I want to do. I am a rusher, that's what I like to do. I'm an aggressive player. I like pressure. But there are times when that will get you killed. When you need to see the situation for what it is and go, hang on a second, this is costing me more than it's giving me. I should really slow this down and change my approach. But at the time, I'm just like, fuck this, dude. I'm a bull in a china shop. I'm going to find another china shop and I'm going to wreck that one too. And I just ran directly towards the danger, no matter what happened. And I just thought in the moment I'd play through it and I'd win. And I did win a lot, but I also lost a lot because of that, you know? And I never saw it, that was the thing. I never could see the fact that that was happening. Whereas now I watch that and I'm like, what am I doing? Why didn't I just let him come to me? Why didn't I see what he was like when somebody stops attacking? Why didn't I take that moment to consider that there's another person here? Instead of just thinking like, oh, he's going to do this, I'm going to do that. You know, and it really does come from that idea of playing a single-player game. And that might not be a notion you've heard before if you're not into fighting games, but it's so true. And I think it might have come from Melee, you know. Because I've told the stories to you guys that back in the day, we used to play Melee a ton, my friend group, and we were all really competitive, but we were crap, let's be fair. We were capable gamers, but we didn't know the meta, and we didn't know any of the tech. We just played, and we competed, and we did our best. And our best just so happened to be, you know, better than anybody in our area. By the way, guys, this sequence here is absolutely miserable. You're going to see the bitchiest Chris you've seen in a while in this playthrough. I'm going to hide in this tunnel and shoot as a helicopter, and I'm not going to push in at all. If you push into this room, the cover is so bad, the enemies are so plentiful, you almost get murdered immediately. So I'm going to show you a very slow burn approach, and it's going to be super successful. But back in those Melee days, guys, I was... You probably can't imagine a more arrogant version of myself, right? Because I am... You could call me arrogant. I don't think I'm arrogant. I think I'm confident. And I think there's a difference. But sadly, it can be misconstrued. You know, I'm not the type of person that's going to lie just to save my ego when I'm wrong all the time. Like, sometimes we do that when we can't help it. But I try my best to not. And I try my best to be better for those points. Because it's super frustrating. When you look back on yourself and you're like, why didn't I just say I was wrong? Why didn't I just say it wasn't this, it wasn't that? Why do we have to do that? Why does our brain sabotage us in those moments? But in those Melee days, I was so confident in my ability on that game that I thought I'd won before I even played. And you might feel the same about another game or have had this experience yourself. It was a bit like that with Yu-Gi-Oh! When we played that back in the day. My deck was in a situation where I had so many tools for so many situations and so many different plays that were so frustrating and so awkward that people probably weren't used to dealing with, that I was confident that when I challenged you to a duel, I would beat you. And the truth is, my deck was awful. It was awful, it was funny, it was goofy, it was entertaining, but it was super unsafe and stupid. And it's just how I played, and I got lucky, basically. I got really lucky that my friends somehow had worse decks than I did, or less optimal decks than they could have had, or maybe they were doing something that was a mistake at the time. But you get to a point where you don't think you can lose, and that confidence that you get from that is such a superpower. This is a big guy though, this is called a Titan. This is a really interesting kind of sub-boss. He walks around and shoots at you, and then you beat him up a bunch, and then he gets these orbs and a shield, and you've got to destroy the orbs to get rid of the shield, and then you beat him up a bunch, and the whole thing is, it's kind of like boss because they need to put a boss in, but it's not that interesting, but at the same time, it's not bad. It's just a little bit average, shall we say. It's not the most ambitious sequence, but I appreciate it. I appreciate the distraction as we nuke him with the really powerful Megatron gun. But I think when you have that competitive history of always feeling like you win and you're the best and being better than your peers in your friend group, I think it can do wonders for stuff like people that suffer with self-esteem and for people that want to feel that rush of succeeding and the endorphins in that. But I think it can skew how you see things after that. And I don't know whether or not that's healthy or unhealthy, because I feel like anything else, isn't it? It's a learning process, and if you never did those mistakes, you never learned from them later, and then you never had the conversation where you appraised the fact that you weren't where you thought you were. But I can honestly say that having felt both aspects of it, feeling like I can never lose, and then later on moving into something I'm not good at and feeling like I can never win, it's definitely a valuable lesson either way.